Um, my name is Kerry Mahoney, and I am the Director of Outreach and Education at the ARC of Massachusetts. So welcome everyone. Hi, Diane. We've got a small group. I'm hoping that more people jump on because we want to get moving today. Today I am excited to welcome Greg Austin from Inclusive Fitness. And I don't know, Greg, I think I talked to you probably about a year ago about your idea and how to, how to generate business and spread the word and that sort of thing. So I'm excited to see that you're in a good space despite COVID-19 and figuring
right.
out what to do. So why don't you take it away?
You bet. Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Greg Austin. It looks like we do have a couple more people joining. It'll be a small group, but that is perfectly fine. So let me just progress the slides a little bit. I'll introduce you to myself really quickly, just so you know who I am, once I've kind of reiterated why we're here. So Kerry asked if I would come and spend a few minutes telling you a little bit about some ideas that we've been working on at Inclusive Fitness to bring exercise and wellness to people in families with neurodiversity. And so what I wanted to do today was tell you a little bit about myself, about our approach and what we're doing, but really spend most of our energy on talking about things that you can do, making it as practical as possible so that some of the things that we're doing both with some of our clients prior to COVID-19 and even virtually today, maybe you can start to employ in your own home or wherever you feel like you can do this sort of thing. The idea, of course, is to get moving, to get active, and we all know about the benefits of that. I'll talk some more about that in a moment, but that's what we want to do today. My hope is that everyone will have an opportunity to get up and move a little bit, try some of these things out. I'm going to demonstrate a few exercises for you. I have some examples of a program that one can do that we use. And I also hope that people will ask questions, and if they have some things they want to follow up on later, that they will do that. I'm more than willing to talk to people afterward. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about me. Uh-oh, I went too far. It's a little bit of a delay, guys. Sorry, it's the world of, excuse me, Kerry, can you go back to the slide has a picture of a bunch of pictures on it? There we go. All right, so about me. As I mentioned, my name is Greg Austin, and I'm the founder of Inclusive Fitness. But I've only been doing this for about a year to a year and a half. Prior to that, I was the chief marketing officer for about 20 years for a handful of global consulting firms. But along the way, my wife and I, you can see her there crossing the finish line at the Ironman in North Carolina. She and I had a little boy named Lucas. That's him right there, obviously. And he's now 14, and he was diagnosed as being on the spectrum at about the age of 2.5. And so after continuing with my career, and Christina also in her career in marketing and high tech, I made a decision to leave my company and start Inclusive Fitness, because what we noticed was that not only Lucas, but our whole family really benefited from the exercise that we did. Christina and I are both very, very amateur athletes, but we are very avid exercisers. And we got Lucas into exercise and into eating well, which is not always very easy. You can see him there crossing one of his first little kids triathlons with our service dog, Rory. And what we noticed is that it had a huge impact on him. It made him calmer. It made him more focused. It gave him a lot of self-confidence. As a matter of fact, after that race, Christina and he were riding their bikes, and she could hear him saying something behind her. And he was saying, she slowed down so she could hear, he was saying, "I can do anything I want. I can do anything I want." And that really inspired us. And by the way, he wasn't very verbal at the time. So that was kind of a breakthrough for us. And so we started Inclusive Fitness with the idea in mind that we could really start to change some things and start to help other families also benefit from the kind of things that we were seeing in our own lives. Kerry, for some reason, I'm not being able to move the slides. If you don't mind just moving it to the next slide. Thanks. So I started doing some research and talking to families, friends of ours, talking to professionals, and reached out to a number of people across the country and even around the world to talk about this, and realized that there is a dearth of opportunities when it comes to good, solid, long-term programming for kids like my son and adults as well. Also, we realized that there weren't a lot of opportunities for the whole family. And so we built Inclusive Fitness to be truly inclusive of not only the people who are neurodiverse in our families, but also for the family members who support them and love them. And one of the people I reached out to is Jim Adams. There's a quote here from some research that he did recently. It's still in pre-publication, but he said I could share it. Talking about the impact of exercise as one of the most effective modalities in treating a number of areas. The fact is, of course, though, that, and I'm going to try to progress if I can. If it doesn't move forward, Kerry, then I'll just ask you to let the next half of the panel show up. The fact is that there are not a lot of resources, and most neurodiverse people don't get regular physical activity and exercise and support in the way that we should and they all need. And so that's what sort of drove us to create Inclusive Fitness. The next slide, if you care, you don't mind progressing it, just covers off some of the things from Jim's work that I think is really interesting, some of the findings from this massive survey he did of about 700 families with people who have autism around the country. Overall, it was self-reported that exercise was the most effective therapy compared to many of the therapies for overall benefit. But specifically, it affected lethargy, hyperactivity, and anxiety in very positive ways. And of course, there's really no downside to exercise. There's only positives. And so I'm probably telling you something that you already know. I don't need to preach to the choir, but I wanted to share this really interesting data with you because it made it really compelling to us that we need to affect some change. We need to help people who are neurodiverse, as well as family members, caregivers, and others who are part of this community, get more exercise and have the kind of support they need for a long, healthy lifestyle. So let's progress to the next slide. So that's what we do. This is our mission statement at Inclusive Fitness. We create healthy lifestyles for neurodiverse people, their families, and communities. So it's not just about for like people like my son, Lucas. It's for all of us because we all need it. As I mentioned earlier, my wife, Christina, and I are very avid exercisers, and it really helps us find balance. It helps us deal with stress, and it gives us the sort of the calm we need to be better parents, not to mention better partners. And so that's why we want to help support the whole family as well as caregivers, because we're all so stressed. We're all stretched with time. We don't have the resources we need necessarily to get the exercise and the nutrition counseling that we need. So that's why we're here. So let's move on to the next slide, Kerry. Thanks. So I put together a little team. One of my team members is here, Angie Waring. She's in this picture here on the left. There's about 6 of us so far, but the team is going to continue to grow. We also have a number of partners, including, very importantly, Autism Fitness. If you would just click one time, Kerry, it'll make it get bigger. That's all it'll do. But the idea is that we're partnering with Autism Fitness because Eric Chesson, he's the gentleman on the right there, he's one of the leaders in this space, if not the leader, in helping design programs, exercise programs for people on the spectrum. He's been doing this for 16, 17, almost 18 years, I guess now. He's become a friend, he's an advisor to us, and a fantastic partner. But we have a lot of other partners too, as you can see here, who are helping to shape this concept. So, just so you know, what we're doing now is we're looking to raise capital for our first facility. It'll probably be in the Natick area. Most likely, we're not sure yet, but it'll be a dedicated facility for this population. And the idea is that we'll also be able to provide virtual services as well as in-person services. But that's for down the road. What I want to do is talk a little bit more about our approach. So Kerry, do you mind progressing? Great. So we developed a pilot and we started doing this, Angie, I think it was in January or February. And we did this in the Framingham area. And we were having a fantastic time, getting great results. We had a number of families who were participating. The parents would be working out in one area with one of our coaches, getting exercise, and the kids would be working with us in another area, as you can see here. And we were getting wonderful results, but unfortunately, COVID-19 hit, so we had to shut down. What we're doing now is we've started up virtual classes. I have one today, as a matter of fact, at 3 o'clock, with these same families and a few others. And what's cool about it is it's still working. We're getting great results and the families are engaged and it's a lot of fun. I have a blast doing it. So we're going to keep doing that. And that's why we're also learning that we can do this as a part of our business going forward. So hopefully you'll see more of that in the future. Kerry, one more time, please. I mentioned Eric Chesson in the PAC profile. I mentioned the PAC profile, but I mentioned Autism Fitness. Eric came up with this concept of the PAC profile, which stands for physical, adaptive, and cognitive, as a way of thinking about how we approach exercise programming for people who are neurodiverse. Kerry, you can hit it one more time, please. And as I mentioned, it stands for physical, adaptive, and cognitive. And when we think about any exercise, whether you're neurodiverse or otherwise, because I used to be a personal trainer 25 something years ago, this still applied then. You need to think about at what level is this person able to do an exercise physically? What do we need to do to regress to make it easier, or progress or make it harder so that they're challenged but able to succeed? Adaptive, which is how do we motivate this person, right? And what are some of the behaviors that we need to think about so that we can design the programming that will work best for them? And then cognitive, what is their ability to understand what we're asking them, and how are we asking them to do an exercise and follow a program? We need to think about each of these dimensions whenever we put together a program, and this is our approach. And so we're indebted to Eric for this model. By the way, all of our team members are certified pros from Autism Fitness, which has been a godsend, because there are just not too many people who are doing this with this much focus and this much experience. So this is the PAC profile. And Kerry, if you would go ahead and move to the next slide. As you think about exercise, you know, we all sort of have this gestalt, this idea of what it means to exercise and what we do it for. But very specifically, what we are trying to do is, in terms of our programming, is increase strength, stability, and endurance and motor planning, right? In other words, we want to make this work for very fundamental movements, okay, across all those dimensions. But we also want to make sure that motivation to participate in the program is also increasing. So those are the primary goals here. And so you can see those apply to the first aspects of the PAC profile, physical and adaptive. It won't surprise you thank you, that's great. It won't surprise you most likely to recognize or realize that the physical is usually not too much of an issue. Yes, there are people who have issues. We all have joint pain at some point or another in our lives. Some people have other handicaps or disabilities, so we have to accommodate those. But really, it's about the adaptive aspect that's so challenging. And so Eric has designed programming in a way of approaching it that is intended, I'm just going to shrink this so I can read all this, is intended to really address that adaptive aspect. And so some of the advice that he gives and we follow and also give when we're dealing with either coaches or parents or caregivers is the following. And I'll reiterate these later. But you want to establish a very low stress, low anxiety provoking environment. It's very easy as caregivers and parents to kind of get impatient with ourselves, get impatient with the people we love and take care of. But we know all that does is that escalates stress, and that makes adherence and motivation much lower. And so what we try to do is really think about how do we meet the client or the athlete where they are. And there are stories that Eric has shared, and I've experienced this myself, where if the athlete is in the car and doesn't want to get out of the car because of anxiety, my son suffers from severe anxiety, we exercise in the car. There's things you can do there. You saw a picture of me sitting on a treadmill with one of my athletes doing overhead presses. If that's what the athlete is, you meet them there. And I have done even squats on a chair in the lobby of a gym. It's perfectly fine. So you make it very low stress. You also want to offer options and choices. So even though we have a program and things we want to get through, you say, okay, well, what do you want to do? Okay. And often they may not verbalize it, but often they will have a preference. And laying on the floor isn't necessarily an acceptable choice. You can still exercise on the floor, I should say, even when they're laying down, as I mentioned earlier. But you want to give people choices so they have control over what happens. There's no secret order to the exercises we do. It's really about getting through them, as many as you can, but again, in a low stress way. You also want to use contingencies to motivate the athlete. That basically means when you do this, then you can do this. My son, for example, and Angie knows this very well, has a fascination with Maleficent and evil villains. And so he can play with his evil villains, or he can talk about them, or the Little Mermaid, that's another one, if he does a certain thing. And even deeper than that, we'll actually incorporate those concepts into the program, so that if we're playing a game that requires some type of movement, and I've seen Angie do this in amazing ways. Again, she's on the call. She'll say, oh, there's Maleficent. You have to hit Maleficent with the ball. And he will wail that ball at Maleficent. So you find ways to motivate these athletes that are really fun for them and really get them moving. The other thing, and this is more for the parents, caregivers, and coaches, we need to label, demonstrate, do, and cue. So we say, hurdle steps, do the hurdle steps. Now you try. So we tell them to try, and then you cue them. You may have them touch your hand to do a high knee step. You may use your hand on their shoulder, on their lower back, if they're okay with being touched, and if you're okay with that. You may demonstrate yourself. You may show them, this is an overhead press. This is the push toe. But frankly, you don't even want to say this is. You just do it. That's one of the things I've learned, is that the less you talk, the less stressful it is. Because like my son, many folks have processing issues, and it takes time to process what we say. But if we show, it's much more effective if we don't layer on one more complexity via language. So label it, demonstrate it, have them do it, and then cue, but keep the language down. I've already alluded to some of these things here, language and cueing. Mirroring is where, for example, as I showed you, you may do the exact exercise across in them so they see what you're doing. Sometimes it means putting your hand over their hands, over their wrist, maybe a light touch, maybe just close by, giving them a target to reach for, or even hand over hand, literally holding them and going out. I've had to do exercises with clients where the athlete was not able to actually even lift something over their hands. We lower the weight significantly, and I help them do it. And if they can't push a ball, for example, I literally have them drop it into me, okay? So the idea is that you make success almost inevitable, all right? So if you need to move closer to an athlete to show them how to do it, if they just can put a ball in your hand as opposed to throwing a ball 10 feet, that's great. And if it takes 2 months to get there, 3 months, 10 months, that's fine. There's no rush. This is a long-term thing. So finally, let's try this. It's your turn. Use that kind of language, and it tends to work quite well. I already mentioned this. Exercises can be performed in any order. It really doesn't matter, but you do want to try with some mobility exercises, which I'll show you in a minute. Okay, so I'm saying a lot, but I hope that's okay. All right, and I apologize for the light. This is my home gym, and the light's a little bit bright. I'll try to stay out of the way. In terms of the programming that we do, we design our exercise programs with 3 main components. First of all, we want to have warm up and mobility. That's really kind of getting ready to move and loosening up and lubricating the joints. We want to do some dynamic movement. So that's all about coordination, motor planning, and stability. And then finally, we want to wrap up with strength and stability. And this is where you're developing muscle groups, muscle movements that are really effective in life. Okay, and you'll see what I mean in a minute when I demonstrate some of these. And so these are the 3 main components we think about when we design a program. So you're seeing some 3s here, right? There is the PAC profile, physical, adaptive, and cognitive, and thinking through, okay, where is this person and how do I work with them best to meet each of their needs and challenges? And you think about the program in terms of 3 components: warm-up, mobility, dynamic movement, and strength and stability. All right. And by the way, I think we're going to share all these slides with you, and if you have any questions, of course, at the end, I can answer those. All right, so that's how we structure a program. Let's look at some of the actual exercises that we're doing today, especially now that everyone is at home. So I have broken it down into, again, those 3 categories I just described. You can go ahead and click 2 more times, Kerry, and we'll show all of them at once. It's perfectly fine. Now, these exercises are not necessarily exactly the ones that we would do in the gym. I should point out, in the gym, we don't use a lot of equipment. For example, one piece of equipment, which I encourage everyone to get if you don't already have it, is like a band like this. These are very inexpensive. You can get them from Amazon for almost nothing. You can get a whole pack of them. And many people already have them sitting around. But you don't have to have these, and I'll show you some alternatives in a minute. One other thing that's a great thing to get from an equipment standpoint is a sandbell. I don't know if you've ever seen these. Again, not very expensive. The best thing about these is they don't hurt. You can drop them, nothing gets broken. They're fantastic. And they can get very heavy, by the way. So we use these a lot, and I'll again demonstrate in a moment, but you don't have to have these. And so these exercises that we have here are designed not to necessarily use much equipment at all, except for the two things I just showed you. That being said, there is some equipment that we use that you may see in some of our videos on our website, like medicine balls and battle ropes and that sort of stuff, but they're not required. And so what you're seeing here is what we're suggesting people try at home. Okay, and I'm going to demonstrate some of these, but not all of them, because we just don't have time for all of them. But hurdle steps and high knees, overhead circles and the standing band walk, inchworms, and hip bridges are terrific to really warm up and get the mobility going. Okay, and again, I'll demonstrate probably two of those because we want to be conscious of time. When we start getting into more dynamic movement, we have simple movements like side-to-side hops, side shuffle and touch. There's also a thing called a cone touch, which I'll show you in a minute. There's frog jumps and mountain climbers. And as you see me demonstrate these, you'll see, okay, yeah, those are definitely getting you moving. And I'm hoping that you'll try some too. And then we have some strength and stability exercises, the overhead press. There's a mid-back band pull, which seems to have gotten cut off there. It should say pull. There's planks, and if you've ever done those, you probably hate them as much as I do, and squats. So those are some 12 good exercises that you can do at home.
I eat burpees more.
Yeah, I have a shirt that says we have nothing to fear but fear itself, and in small type, and burpees. They're awful. I'm with you there. But I'm going to demonstrate some of these exercises, but you can do these almost anywhere. They don't require a lot of space. And what we found is that a lot of the athletes we work with time, with all the coaching and cueing and the demonstrating and the mirroring I was telling you about, in a low stress environment, they do learn. And sometimes they learn really quickly. And I've had parents just shocked that I didn't know my kid could do this. Yeah, it's really pretty amazing. It's all about presuming competence. And so we try to do that every chance we get. So what I'd like to do is demonstrate a few of these. Overhead circles or the standing band walk. One of my favorite exercises for really working on the shoulder girdle and opening up the back. And then I'll demonstrate the inchworm as well. It's a great exercise to develop strength in the upper part of the body and mobility in the hips. So Kerry, if you would switch, keep going to the overhead band walk and the circles. There you go. I couldn't find a good image for this standing band walk, so I'm going to just show you here. As I mentioned, and I can send anybody a link to these particular bands, but any band will work. It's done very simply. You get the band, you put it over your head, and you don't want to jut your neck forward. You keep your neck back, and you put a little bit of tension on the arms, so they're going out a little bit, okay? And it's called a band walk because you walk. The walking isn't part of the exercise except to make sure that you're holding it for a long enough period of time, because it's kind of boring just to stand here. So basically it's walking like so. About 5 steps, turn around, and about 5 steps back. And then slowly let it down. And I will tell you already, that feels terrific to me, just doing that one time. It's great for the shoulder girdle, and as we all know, neurotypical and neurodiverse people all alike have a lot of shoulder issues, and this is a great way of opening up at the beginning. If you don't have anything like a band, you can also use a towel. This is a short towel we have here for sweat, but you can do the same thing. Just put a little bit of tension on it and just walk. Same thing, right? The way you would cue this is you might mirror it and walk alongside or in front of the person you're working with. You could also have them touch the outside of your hands with their hands, and that puts a little bit of tension there. You might also give them a target so that they reach up. You might see this a little bit. You might see people not knowing where to go because they don't have the sense of space, the proprioception. So just give them a target and then have them take a little bit of stress and push it out like that. Band or towel are perfectly fine. Alternatively, if you happen to have a light object, this happens to be a medicine ball we have here, you can do what you see here. It is a very similar kind of exercise. It takes a little more coordination, but it has the same general effect of loosening up the shoulders. and it just feels terrific. Again, I probably wouldn't use a medicine ball like this because it can be thrown. I've seen it happen a few times. But a sand bell like this can be used in the same way. Also, even if you had some rice and beans and you wanted to wrap them up in a big bag and do it again with some duct tape, you've got yourself a homemade sand bell. So that's the overhead circles and the standing band one. And I'm not kidding, it really feels good. I would encourage you actually right now to get up and just try it, even if you don't have anything to hold on to. Let's move on to the inchworm, Kerry. All right, this is a great exercise. It's like a beginning of a burpee, sorry. It is challenging, but it is a great way to warm up the body and get that mobility going. Just as you see here, and I hope you can see me, I'm not looking at myself, just shout if you don't have a good view. Maybe I'll tip it down a little bit. Is that okay? Can you see me? Great. So, and by the way, I'm not that flexible. Essentially, it looks just like this. You get down, you go out, and then slowly back up. That's it. That's the inchworm. Really engages the shoulders, engages the hips, creates a little bit of extension in the back of the leg, and it builds strength in the shoulder girdle. That's the inchworm. And if you don't like doing burpees, that's a good way of kind of warming up and getting into them. So,
do you recommend doing a certain amount or a certain amount of time?
Great question. Generally speaking, we aim for between 5 and 10 repetitions. Some people, they get distracted by counting. And so we'll say, we'll count 1, 2, 3, and do it for 20 seconds, for example. But usually a rep count between 5 and 10 is usually pretty good. It also depends on what the athlete is able to attend to and what they can physically do. Sometimes if you can only do one, just do the one. The last thing we want to do is have injury. And we also want to make sure that it's so not so uncomfortable that they don't want to come back and do it again, right? The way Eric and I talk about this is we don't do 12-week boot camps, we do 12-year boot camps. And so, like I said earlier, if it takes several weeks, even months to get an exercise down and develop the strength and coordination to do it, that's fine. Start very small and go out and progress gradually. But yeah, I would say shoot for between 5 and 10 repetitions. On the plank, you obviously have to count because you're not doing any movement. So usually a count between 5 and 15 is fine, as long as you're doing it in good form. If you see any degradation in form, you should stop the exercise. Okay. By the way, I talked about progress and regress. There are ways of progressing literally any exercise to make it harder and regressing to make it easier. As I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that whatever anybody is doing, they're doing it properly. And if you see a breakdown in any biomechanics, like an arching of the back or a jutting out of the head, that sort of thing, that means they're probably compensating or overcompensating. And that means you either need to lighten the weight, you do fewer reps, or maybe find an alternative exercise. All right. Good. So those are 2 good warm-up mobility exercises. Let's move on to the other 2, the movement exercises. You probably all know hip bridges. This is a pretty straightforward exercise. All right, side-to-side hops, that's pretty straightforward. I don't need to demonstrate that one. It's literally just hopping from side to side. It's great for proprioception. And you can also, by the way, stay on this one for a second. You can go from side to side like this. You can also go from leg to leg. It's perfectly fine, okay? Some people have a difficult time with that kind of coordination. A regular jump is perfectly fine. If you do this is why jump roping is so great for you. If you do that enough, you will get your heart rate going, all right? So side to side is just one example of the kind of dynamic movement you might want to start with. But let's go to the next one if you would, Kerry. Okay, this is called the side shuffle, side-to-side shuffle and touch. It's an adaptation of an exercise we call the cone touch. The cone touch is, and if you have cones, you can use those, and they're readily available, and I can certainly point you in the right resources to get them, is designed to really get people to move in various ways and work on their coordination. So for example, if I had a row of cones here, I would reach down and touch, reach down and touch, reach down and touch. I don't happen to have my cones here, and you probably don't have a whole bunch of cones sitting around in your house. What you can do though, is you can say, here's a doorknob, here's another doorknob. Shuffle over here, touch it, shuffle over here and touch it. shuffle over here and touch it, shuffle over here and touch it. You could also say, touch the ball, touch the ball, touch the doorknob. If you need to take a couple of steps, you can do that. You can also put things lower on the floor. You can put a Scotch tape X, a circle, a Post-it note, anywhere on various surfaces and say, touch the ceiling up there if they're really tall, all right? Touch this over here. Touch this down here. The idea is to get the body moving in a variety of directions. Golly, I'm out of breath by just doing this. That's pathetic. It does work. I'm not kidding. This stuff really gets you going. And so this is an alternative to it that's quite simple, requires no equipment whatsoever. But let's say, for example, I have two of these. These are like little weighted balls. It could be a coffee cup for all I cares. Probably something you don't want to have broken. You put it on the floor here, put it on the floor there. Have the person take a step, go down and touch it. Take another step, down and touch it. It's as simple as that. But you can imagine all the parts of the brain that are having to engage to do that. All right. So I don't know if anybody is able to get up and try that real quick, but if you want to stand up and maybe try, you could even, like I said, a doorknob, something that's already sitting there. If you did that 10 times, going down like this, touching different things and having different targets, you'd be surprised at how much your heart starts to move. So that's a great one. And I see a couple of you guys trying it. Excellent. Also, when you're doing it, do a little bit of a squat down. As opposed to just bending down, you want to get the hips engaged and squat down like so. Like that. Because you're then working the hips, the glutes, the quadriceps, the hamstrings, the bigger muscle groups that are going to make you work harder.
And you hear my knees crinkle.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Every time I go up the stairs, it sounds like a Rice Krispies. All right. Let's move on to the frog jump. We're going to go a little bit over, but I'll try to wrap it up. Okay. If you want to get your heart going, this is one of my favorites. And by the way, this is some of our athletes' favorite exercise. All right? And we literally yell, "Rit it," when we do this. So you want to stand with your feet over shoulder width apart, hands kind of like this together, if you can see me. Drop down like so. If you can, touch the floor and go up. Touch the ceiling. And up. If you do 10 of these, rit it like that, you will be breathing very heavily within a few seconds. I guarantee it. And it's also just a blast. So the frog jump is a fun exercise to do. It really gets the blood going. You could do it anywhere. All right, let's move on to the strength exercises really quickly. Kerry? Okay, mountain climbers. Let's see. The overhead press. This is a really important one. This is where you do need some equipment, but again, it could be anything depending on what you have around the house. Here's my sand bell. The shoulder girdle we find in our athletes is often underdeveloped, as is the back. So this is a very important exercise, as is the next one I'm going to demonstrate. The sand bell, or as I mentioned, anything that has some weight to it, but that can't be thrown and hurt somebody is really, really smart. It'll be fine. You want to hold the sand bell like so and push it up and slowly down. Again, between 5 and 10 times. You're seeing demonstrated here with one arm. That's fine too. You can do that with one arm. Oftentimes there's not enough strength or stability in the shoulder to be able to do that. So generally speaking, we like to stabilize it with 2 hands. Thumbs on the bottom, right here, up and down. What you will often see is this, up and down, up and down. You want to use cueing by touching the elbows and having them go down slowly. And then a target, again, to go up slowly so that you're controlling it. Again, mirroring it, sitting across from them so that they're seeing exactly how to do it and they're following your pace is a great way of doing this. And wonderful for the shoulder girdle. Right, exactly, you got it. That's the right pace too. The way you would progress is you would go to either a heavier dumb weight, I have several over there, or you could go to one hand, just like this. I have an athlete who just finally progressed to you doing this, and because he finally developed over 6 months the mobility and the stability to be able to do it. So it just takes time. That's the shoulder overhead press, fantastic exercise. And I want to show you one more. This is the one, exactly. The mid-back band pull. This is where it's very useful to have a band, okay? Again, thankfully, this is one of the most inexpensive pieces and most valuable pieces of equipment you can buy. You get the band and you hold it in your hands like so, relatively close together, about shoulder width apart. And what you want to have the athlete do is stand with their feet firmly rooted in the ground, hold it at shoulder height, like this, and then pull back with the elbows mostly straight and till the band touches the chest, and then again, slowly back. I'll come closer so you can see again. Out, and then slowly back. What you'll often see is this. So again, cueing by using your fingers and saying, oh, follow my hands, don't let it go too slow, too fast, so that they actually keep a nice, even pace. And also demonstrating that they keep the elbow mostly straight and they're not jutting their head forward, like so. Right. And this is a terrific exercise for the muscles in the back that are often the cause for bad posture. You'll find people rolling forward like this. This strengthens the shoulder muscles in the back, the posterior part of the chain, and actually helps with posture because we're all on screens, we're all sitting down. Oh, you've got a band, I like it. Fantastic. Exactly, so nice and slow, and then slowly on the way back and keeping tension on that band, exactly. All right. I do want to show you one more if I could. Can you guys indulge me with one more and go to the plank? No, let's go to the squat. The squat is, oh, it says plank, but I guess I made a mistake there. It's a squat. Oh, it caught up, good. The squat, I think, is one of the best exercises you can do, but it is also very hard. It may take months to learn how to do a squat properly, sometimes years. That's okay. We're not using any weight initially, although we can load it up later. You probably all have seen squats. You've probably all done squats. My guess is that, you know, they're not people's favorite, but they are a terrific exercise. You want to stand with your feet a little over shoulder width apart. Hopefully you can see me okay. And you want to put your hands generally in front of you to counterbalance the fact that your hips are going to pop out. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. You drop down, putting your weight in your heels down to about where your thighs are level with the ground, and then all the way back up again, like so. And anybody who can right now, I would encourage you to try it. Again, you'll see I'm using my hands to counterbalance the fact that my hips are going back and then going back up. You are going to lean forward a little bit, but what you don't want to see is this. Okay, that's just folding like an accordion. The idea is really to engage the quadriceps and the glutes. And here's an important cueing point. If you have an athlete who has a hard time knowing where to go, and that's very often the case, find an object like this bench I have right here. I don't know if you can see it, because they can just touch it and go back up. Even if it's not low enough now, perfectly fine. It could be a chair. It could also be this medicine ball, or any other kind of ball you happen to have. You can see, give people a target, and then back up. Again, what you'll see often is this. You'll see them go up like that, and flop down, and flop off. What you want to do in that case is hold their hands, help them up, or even go down with them and go back up and mirror like that. Give them targets, give them guides, give them a show and demonstration of how to do it. Over time, they'll learn how to do it. By the way, I didn't intentionally fall off. That was me actually falling off. So those are some of the exercises that we do. And I should point out that there are no real autism-specific or neurodiverse-specific exercises. There are some that are better or worse. These are ones that we found that work really well and that generally people can do. And so that's why I put them here. But there's no limit, really. It's just that these work really well. And it's a good, well-rounded program. Let's go to the last slide, if you could. Great. So these are the things I kind of wanted to wrap up with, and then we can see if I have any questions. As I mentioned earlier, you want to meet the athlete where they are. If they're at the kitchen table, and they don't want to move, or if they're on the ground and they don't want to move, that's fine. You can do stuff with the band sitting down on the floor, laying down on the floor, sitting at the kitchen table, it doesn't matter. You can do squats in the bedroom, you can do the squats anywhere. Meet them where they are. By the way, if you do that long enough, they'll realize, all right, fine, I guess I'm gonna exercise. And they'll eventually get to the point where they generally go where you want them to go and work with you in a way that's really productive. Exercise consistently a little bit at a time. Don't worry about getting through all the exercises. There have been programs where I've gotten through half of an exercise in a 45-minute program because of behaviors. That's fine. That one exercise was one exercise closer to getting closer to the 2 exercises that we want to do. So take your time, be patient, keep it low stress for everyone, including yourself. There's no hurry. There's no like, you got to lift this much weight. I've had parents who've made the mistake of trying to push their kids too hard and injured them. And my point is, like, take your time. We're not going anywhere, especially these days. Offer options and choices. Like I said earlier, do you want to do hurdle steps or would you like to do rope swings first? Do you want to do this or that? And eventually you'll start to realize what people like more and let them do that first. And it can also be used as a reward, I should say. Neurotypical people like myself, we like a lot of variety. Generally speaking, that isn't intrinsically valuable though. Most of our athletes like the same kind of program over and over and over again, and that's why we choose a well-rounded program. It's fine to repeat the same program a lot, sometimes for months and months and months. It's perfectly fine. They're still very valuable. As I mentioned, use contingencies to motivate the athlete. Think of those ahead, have them handy. I have Lucas's, we do Miss Piggy, we do Maleficent, and we do Ariel. Have those available and use them, but it's always, when you do this, then this. And eventually you get to a point, it could be like this. You say, when you do hurdle steps, then you can do rope swings, because I know you like rope swings. Now that's a great stage to be at. As I mentioned earlier, label it, say hurdle steps, nothing else, just hurdle steps, demonstrate it, you do it, and then cue them as lightly as you can with hands and modeling. Regress to the point where they cannot fail. Make success basically inevitable. If that means standing right there if they're pushing a ball to you and they're literally just handing it to you and not wailing at it from 10 feet away, that's great. That's where you want it to be. If you can step back and progress it a little bit so that they can still do it properly, even if it's just a few inches more, that's the right progression. If they then start slamming it on the ground, okay, we'll step back in. It's fine, cool, we'll do it this way for a while. We could do this way for weeks. I got all the time in the world. But only progress when they're doing it properly. If they can't do the squat properly with a target, then don't take the target away and have them put on weight, like a sandal or something. And then finally, this is really important, be a model yourself of health and fitness. Kids like my son and your kids and people you love and take care of, they see what we do. They take it all in. And if we're modeling good health, if we're exercising, if we're eating well, if we're doing mindfulness exercises, that will become what their expectation of life should be. I can't stress this one enough. And that's why Christine and I do this, because it has really shaped the way Lucas sees the world. He knows that exercise, eating well, good choices are important. He can't necessarily verbalize that in the way I just did, but it's true. And it's becoming a part of his life. And I hope it'll last him his whole life. I hope it will. That's our goal. So those are the big 10 takeaways I have for you. Kerry, you want to turn to the last slide? I think I have some contact information there. We're doing these services right now for free, our virtual classes. It's fun. We're just helping people out. We'll eventually start charging for them. But right now, if anybody has questions, they can email me, you can call me. I'm happy to talk. I love doing this. If you want to join our classes, I can tell you how to do that later. But I'll open it up for questions. We're a little over, I apologize, but I hope it was useful.
Do you
Thank you.
recommend
Yeah,
stretching
okay, go ahead, Julie, sorry.
at the end of the workout, or
Oh, would you repeat your question, please?
do you recommend stretching of any sort at the end, or?
It's interesting you asked that question, because one of the things that's a part of inclusive fitness, which I haven't talked a lot about, we have 3 components, 3 pillars of health. There's exercise, right, which we just talked about. There's nutrition, but there's also mindfulness and like yoga. And so there's adaptive yoga techniques that we're starting to use as well. We haven't really gotten into that as much, but there are some very good adaptive yoga techniques that are really effective to work on flexibility. Because the exercises we're doing with most of our athletes aren't overly stressful, we generally don't spend a lot of time doing stretching at the end. I'm lucky to keep them focused for 30 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes. But as they get better and more aware of their body, and as just like us, as we get more aware of our body, it's a good idea to start introducing good flexibility exercises that you would do in any kind of a yoga class or any kind of type of sport, especially if you find like there's tightness in the shoulder girdle, the hamstrings, the hips. Those are areas where we all have tightness, it seems. And I can certainly share some lists of those, but it's not a big stress because what we're doing is not that stressful for the body generally. Any other questions? It's a great question. Any other questions?
Yeah. Diane, did you have a question? I saw that your hand was raised. You can unmute yourself.
I was actually just clapping. That was
Oh.
Oh, you were
Yeah.
clapping. Okay. All right.
but I will ask a question. So we're on day 79 of having my sister here, and we live. We live in a condo building. So during the early days, most of our exercise was inside in the hallway and trying to go up and down stairs. She has stairs at home, so we want to keep her active on those. Needs a lot of support. We don't have a sidewalk on a street accessible, but the exercise videos, all the things that you've suggested, aside from the specific exercises, I have really tried on a regular basis, and I go back to exercising with Maggie Letvin, which is way before your time. I'll let you look that up afterwards. So you
I'm older than I look, I'll tell you that.
Maggie Letvin was the first woman to have a televised exercise program, and I actually took classes with her. Yeah, Daddy used to watch her. Yeah.
Nice. All right.
Bookstore. You went to the bookstore and you met her. So I can't quite get the motivation. I can't quite get her to engage. I think possibly because it's me. This morning we had a little more success with my husband jumping in, but basically she just sits and looks down and folds her hands in.
Yeah.
Any suggestions to really just get them off the mark?
Yeah, it's a very real issue. My son's the same way, and you actually hit on an important issue. It is your kid. My son doesn't like training with me. He loves training with all my other coaches. He's great with them. Isn't that the way it goes, right? So what I find I have to do is I really have to rely on contingencies a lot, something that I know is a real reward for him. And I use that as a motivator. Again, it's the win-then model of even making it so that there's almost no space between the two, at least initially. So for example, I was trying to get him, when we were first starting to work together, to do overhead presses properly. He didn't want to do anything. He was like, no, I want to go see mom. I want to watch my iPad, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay. I tell you, when you do 2 shoulder presses properly, then you can have a break and you can go watch your iPad for 5 minutes, and we had a timer. And that just happens to be a strong motivator for him. I don't know what your daughter's motivators might be, but we all have them. It's just a matter of discerning which ones are appropriate to use. And I was able to go from, okay, fine, I'll do 2 just to get what I want. I'm not doing this because it's good for me and because you asked me to. I'm doing it because I'll get what I want. And then we were able to progress that to 3, then to 4, then to 10, and then 15. But it took a lot of time. But we had to chain those very closely together. And so that's one approach. I don't know if you've tried that, but it's basically behavior modification, one-on-one, but it's hard to do and you have to be super patient.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, basically she'll just sit there and not move.
Yeah.
She's not asking to do anything else, so it's, I think we've got some suggestions here today with this things that she was actively engaging in that will, hearing it from you and from someone else and seeing it, we'll try these things tomorrow. And I think that'll make a difference.
Well, I would mention that there's 2 other resources that might help you in that particular case. I'm always happy to get on a Zoom call individually and do a little coaching.
Okay.
Happy to do it because anything I can do to help would be fine. Also, Eric Chesson, I mentioned him several times. He does put a training on for parents that is very in-depth, and yeah. And so he's doing it virtually now, and that's part of our program actually is his participating in running a workshop with parents to walk through some of those motivation techniques. And he is running those. They're not very expensive, but they're very valuable. And so that might be something you want to look into, and I can send you some resources about that too.
Okay.
It's called Try This at Home. He really is the leader in this. He travels all around the world training coaches how to do this. And so I'm very fortunate to count him as a friend. And he's been doing this for like 17, 18 years, I think. And he's seen this before. I can guarantee you, even more than me. And he could probably help you.
What was his name again? My sound cut out for a bit. So.
Eric, E-R-I-C, Chesson, C-H-E-S-S-E-N. He's the founder of Autism Fitness.
Okay, thank you.
Oh yeah, my pleasure.
Great.
Any other questions? I know we've gone over, but I'm happy to stick around for a bit longer. Anything else?
Yeah, you can feel free to unmute yourself to ask it. I don't see any in the chat. Oh, I do. Wait a minute. Sorry.
Oh, just
Here we
thank
go.
you. Great info from Karen.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thanks for the great information. You will all receive a copy of the presentation at the end too, so you'll have, remember to how to do all those great exercises. So, anyways, it looks like we're nobody else has any questions. So thank you so much, Greg. This is really so helpful, and I just, I wish you all the luck in the world in getting this off the ground. What a wonderful program you've put together, and it really makes sense. I'm looking at you, Julie, because you and your daughter are so impressive. Do you want to just quickly share your
Peloton? She follows along with the Peloton classes.
Oh, that's great.
I started off with 10-minute Peloton class.
Yeah.
Now we're up to half hour.
Wow, that's great. How old is she?
She's 16.
That's awesome. Good for you.
She's really very sedentary, but she does like to do exercise, but you have to kind of motivate her. So I have her doing like 14-day streaks. So if you do a half hour for 14 days in a row, you'll get this prize. And
we do that all the time.
So,
yep.
That's been good. And even like we have mini prize, like every 5 days she'll get like a Kinder Egg because she loves those things. So
yep.
It's just kind of thinking of different things to do with her. But what I'd like to do is she's very rigid about things. So I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate other things than Peloton, because I'm worrying that her hamstrings and quads are going to get pretty tight after a while.
Hence the question about stretching.
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense.
Because I'll say, hey, you should try and do the 5 minutes body stretch at the end of the cycle. But she's like, nah.
I'm done. Yeah. Well, by the way, I'm like her. I'm like, nah, I'm done.
I've actually always never stretched, but now that I'm starting to feel pain everywhere, I'm starting to stretch more, and it is helpful.
Yeah. When I hit my 50s, I started realizing I got to start stretching out a lot more because I run a lot.
And that's why I'm like trying to have her not make the same mistake and stretch now before she realizes she needs it, so that when she's older,
it's a lot more work. Yeah,
she's already doing
a lot deeper hole to dig out of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Well, I'm happy to talk to you about those things. As long as you guys are doing some great things, that's terrific.
Yeah. Do you think, because we're not really that close to Natick, but will you ever offer like one-on-one Zoom sessions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do that already. Yeah, I do Zoom one-on-one sessions with a couple of guys now, young adults. And I'm also schooling my son, so I balance those things out.
Yeah.
And by the way, our goal is to open up one facility, but then there she is, open up facilities around the country down the road. Hi, what's your name?
My name is Helen.
Hi, Helen, I'm Greg. How are you?
Good.
I hear you like Peloton.
I did Peloton yesterday.
Yeah, are you gonna do it today?
It's day 6.
Yeah, today's day 6.
Nice. All right. She knows where she is. Right on. Well, you and I can have a separate conversation if you'd
Yeah.
like. I'd be happy.
Yeah,
My
I'll,
contact information is there.
Great, terrific. Thank you so much, Greg.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Last thing I'll ask before Kerry close it out is if anybody has any feedback for me, this is the first time I've given this presentation. If you have any suggestions, ideas, I can make it better for you. I'm all ears.
Could you attach maybe links that you may find on Amazon for certain equipment that's inexpensive?
Yes, absolutely.
That would be great.
Kerry,
Like
are you going to?
handbells are very interesting.
Oh, great.
Very.
Kerry, are you going to? Can I send stuff to you, Kerry, or do you want to send me the list of people who attended?
Yeah, why don't you send me the links, and I will certainly pass those along to everybody today.
Perfect. I'll do that today.
Terrific. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. All
Thanks,
right. Well,
guys.
thank you, Greg. Appreciate it. And thank you all for joining today. And I wish you good health and good exercise and stay healthy, okay?
Yeah.
Take care.
Stay safe these days.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. See you, Jarrett.